Hello friends, welcome to a new thing series. I'm gonna teach a little bit about Rust in my Rust bucket. I'm currently in my rusty, trusty Jeep, somewhere in the foothills of the Cascades, driving through some sort of snow. And I wanna teach you a little bit about some of the Rust basics. So today I'm going to teach you how to set up the AWS SDK in Rust. Namely, there are a couple of things that are slightly different compared to some other languages, but I'm going to teach you about a couple of things. Number one, recently we've released a feature with the AWS CLI called the AWS Login. Basically, it gives you the ability to log into your AWS account using the CLI, without having to store any sort of keys or secret keys or key IDs. Basically, you run the AWS login command, and that login command takes you to the browser, authenticates your session, and you're good to go. So it's amazing. You can do it locally. It will open up a browser. You can pass on the -- remote command, -- remote parameter, and that will basically enable you for an SSH session. It will give you a URL and a place to paste a code. Amazing. So when it comes to the Rust SDK, there's a couple of things you need to do. You, number one, need to install the given SDK. Number two, you need to give it a shared configuration. And this shared configuration is basically how you configure your SDK. Now, you can pass it the defaults, and to configure the SDK, by the way, you need to use the AWS config crate. You can just use the defaults, like the load from env or just from env. This will load all the latest behavior defaults for this SDK. However, you can make some modifications. Number one, you can change the region. In an application I'll show you in a little bit, I can pass the region on as a parameter, or I can load the region from different places. I can load it from an environment variable, I can load it from my configuration, or I can even configure it within the application itself. Number two, credentials. By default, any SDK, in this case the Rust SDK, will use the environment variable credentials if they are set. That takes precedence over anything. However, if not, it will go ahead and take your profile configuration, which in this case we got with the AWS login. So there's a bunch of different ways you can modify it and change that, but here's a list of the preferences of how it will actually choose the credentials in which order, well, you define it. And lastly, there's this one very nifty feature, and I'm going to show this to you in a second, is you can set up the SDK endpoint. That means if you use some wonderful tools like, I don't know, LocalStack, you can absolutely point your SDK, the Rust SDK, to a local stack. Like in this case, it will not send requests over to AWS. It will send it to my LocalStack instance, which is just a great way to do some local development and stuff. So that's great. Okay, I'm gonna park somewhere and I'm gonna show this code to you in real time, and we're gonna see what it actually does. See you in a bit. Okay, let me show you that whole SDK configuration right now in some code. Also, hello from the back of my Jeep. So, okay, let's see. So this is a little application I have here. It is nothing special. It is just listing DynamoDB tables from the beyond. And a couple of things I have set up here. I have a parameter here I'm looking into passing. I'm literally passing a region parameter to my application. It's just a command line parameter, nothing special. And I'm gonna be parsing that into number one, my region provider. I'm setting up a region provider chain, basically trying to define which region I'm gonna be using for this specific SDK call. In this case, number one, I'm trying to just use my specific, the parameter I'm passing, the region here, and creating a new region with it. That's it, that's number one. Or I'm going to the default provider. The default provider is basically gonna look at the environment variables, it's gonna look at the profile, and it's gonna look at the EC2 IMDS version 2 for it. If it can't do any of those things, it's gonna fall back to US East 1. This kind of gives you the ability to kind of just go through the chain and select the one that works, right? You select the ideal one, that if it does work, you select what's okay, and then lastly, you just fall back to whatever is sure fine. Okay, that's one thing. Second, here's where we do the configuration of the SDK. Now we're running the AWS config crate here from env. Basically, we're using the behavior version latest here. We're selecting the region we just defined. We're defining a profile in this case. You can select which profile you want to use within this SDK. I'm using the profile called personal here, but you can set it to anything. You don't have to set this, it's optional. And this is where the endpoint is being set up. Remember I told you you can do this thing with LocalStack? Yeah, I'm literally pointing it to the LocalStack endpoint that gives me the ability to run with my local quote-unquote resources. I'm just loading the configuration here, basically setting all of these things up and passing it on into basically a little SDK config object. And then lastly, when I'm making the call, while I'm creating the DynamoDB client, in this case, this is the DynamoDB SDK client, I am passing it on the SDK config, so the specific client will know how to act. And lastly, this is where I'm just kind of calling the tables. Now, this will not work right now because I am in the middle of nowhere. There's no internet. They still haven't given me those LEO satellite access things. So, but in essence, what this would do is basically it would call LocalStack in my case and list all of the databases in a region I tell it to. So, yeah, this is kind of the easiest way for you to configure. Well, not the easiest way. This is the most comprehensive way you can configure SDK. You actually don't need to do anything of that. You can just do a from env and do a .load, and that's going to be more than enough for you to work with Rust SDK and AWS. Till the next time.